I just want to say the Nets have Lonnie Walker, Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas. Those guys are all shooting the lights out. And everybody who listens to Hot Hand Theory knows I love me some three-point shooting. Those guys are all shooting ridiculous percentages from three. The Nets are sixth in the NBA in three-point frequency, third in the entire NBA in three-point shooting accuracy, shooting 39% as a team, which is crazy. So I really appreciate the style that the Nets are playing with. They have all of these wings who can all shoot and score, and they're taking advantage of that to create great spacing. Dinwiddie creates a ton of those threes for them. He runs a bunch of pick and rolls. He runs a bunch of ISOs. And they really have just like three guys who touch it a lot. It's Dinwiddie, Cam Thomas, and Mikal Bridges. Those are the kind of three that really touch the ball primarily. The rest of the guys are all spacing out and shooting. 11th offense in the league. I think they have a bit of a higher ceiling just based on the shooting. They've kind of been on a slide offensively lately. But I really like watching the Nets because they're playing a style that I really appreciate. Take a bunch of threes and make a bunch of threes. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention about the Nets on the other end is can someone explain how they found Day'Ron Sharpe while already having Nick Claxton? Like I don't, is that fair? Like I don't understand. Day'Ron Sharpe has been incredible defensively. Is a monster on the boards. Maybe not quite as good as a rim protector as Nick Claxton, but is very effective there as well. Just ridiculous that they have those two guys as their center rotation. But I think the Nets are dangerous, and I don't think it's a walk in the park to play against them for anybody because they can shoot the lights out, and we know that's subject to high variance. If all those guys hit a bunch of threes, they're beating any team in the NBA. And I think they have a decent defensive ceiling as well, besides the fact that all the wings and guards that I mentioned are not the best defenders besides Mikal. Cam Johnson hasn't been as good as he's been in the past. Royce O'Neal hasn't been as good as he's been in the past. DFS, who should be a really good defender, hasn't been as good as he's been in the past. Cam Thomas is a turnstile completely, and Dinwiddie is a bad defender as well. So, but I think that they have a higher ceiling than how we've seen them perform, and I think that they're a dangerous team for anybody on any given night.
I'm more curious about the Nets long term to move away from this matchup specifically and talk more like. I don't really know what direction they're headed in, and I'm curious what you think of that because aside from Mikal Bridges, they don't really seem married to any particular player. I don't think the Knicks are, we talked about this guy earlier, I don't think the Knicks are going to be in the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes. Does it just feel inevitable that Mitchell ends up in Brooklyn? That has to be the most likely outcome, right?
Donovan Mitchell is a perfect fit in Brooklyn, in my opinion. I think he works seamlessly with Mikal Bridges, is obviously a better creator than anybody that they have on the team. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie has looked like an offensive star on very low efficiency. And that's because there's so much space on the court when all those guys are spacing out. Like they play at the 4, Dorian Finney-Smith, who is shooting, last time I checked, 44% from 3 this year on high volume. The spacing's incredible on that team, and they have guys who can attack the basket ferociously at the 5, who are either going to get offensive rebounds or are going to dive or are going to be in the dunker spot and be able to fill space when Dorian Finney-Smith when Spencer Dinwiddie gets into the paint. So if Spencer Dinwiddie is able to look as he's looked on, again, low efficiency, not a threat from 3 really, like a sketchy shooter, can be hot, run hot or cold. If he's able to be as good as he's been, as effective as he's been as a creator, imagine what Donovan Mitchell would do with this kind of surrounding squad. I don't know what they would have to give up to get him, but I think that's the perfect fit. And I think that would make this Nets team very dangerous moving forward. I also think that Nick Claxton is, I'm not sure if I would go as far as to say this, but Day'Ron Sharpe may be making Nick Claxton expendable. And Sharpe played, he hasn't, up until this season, he hasn't been healthy. And so we haven't really got to see what he has. I mean, last year, I think he played 50 games or something like that. The year before, I know he played 32 of 82 games. he's been kind of up and down, but this year we're seeing him put it all together. He's 22 years old. I think he's a good player. I think he's really good, and I think that we could see Nick Claxton become expendable. So that I don't know what his value would be as a five. A really good, strong defensive five who has a good impact on the offensive end due to his efficiency and his ability to get offensive rebounds and attack the basket. But I'm not sure if he has value. But to me, their future is Bridges and a guy like Donovan Mitchell and the wings that they have around him, as defensive wings and as shooters. I think that that's a really good team. If they can hold on to Cam Johnson, they can hold on to Mikal Bridges, potentially hold on to DFS, and one of their centers and a guy like Donovan Mitchell. I think that's a really good team. So to me, I think this Nets team actually has a really good upside.
Well, if they're going to trade for Mitchell, they have to trade something. I'm not sure what they would. I'm not sure what they would trade, but it would. But I think they will also have a lot of leverage. Like if Cleveland gets to the point where they're like, "Oh shit, we're not keeping Mitchell," you have to imagine they'd at least feel out the market. And I do think Mitchell wants to ultimately be in New York. My guess is he wants to be a Knick, but I don't know if the feeling's super mutual. I think with Brunson, the Knicks would be correctly, by the way, a little weary about pairing Mitchell with Brunson because there's a lot of redundancy in the strengths and weaknesses. So I think Brooklyn's going to end up the overwhelming favorite. And I have to agree with you that if you just start with the core of Mitchell, Bridges, and Cam Johnson, that's going to be really good. If you have Mitchell, Bridges, Cam Johnson, and a center that's producing like Claxton or Sharp, that's going to be really good.